Hi, welcome to Hot Topics Live podcast. I'm Kia, and this is your weekly reminder that you are amazing and you are enough, more than enough. And you deserve to have, be, or do anything you want in this life to ensure that you're living your best life possible. So today it's a little bit different. It's just me. So there's no Matilda, there's no Gloria, there's no Carla today. It's just your girl Kia. And I am going to bring you the most incredible guest that you could possibly imagine. Now, I happen to be on Instagram, as I often am, just scrolling through, and I came across this page and it was writing, and I just kept looking at this writing and looking at this writing, and I thought, this really resonates with me. Like, this woman, she knows what she's talking about, and I'm feeling this. And I discovered she was an author. So my guest today is an author. She has written this incredible book. It has kind of a big title, but I can tell you that it resonated with me because it's like, you're not too much. And I have often spent a lot of times in my life feeling like I'm too much for this organization, this corporation. I'm too much for this relationship. I'm even too much in my family growing up. As many of you know, that, I grew up in a very rough, dysfunctional family as a child abuse survivor. So we learn these survival mechanisms that we oftentimes carry throughout our lives that served us well. They protected us and kept us safer as children or as teenagers. But as adults, we might not need them anymore. And sometimes you can feel alone in some of these protection mechanisms that you've created to keep yourself safe. And it's nice to know that there are people out there that have wisdom and are willing to share this wisdom to just help you feel better, to feel heard, to feel seen. And this guest and the work that she does, I think she does this for a lot of people. So I'm really excited to bring her out. I'm not going to waste any more time. Her name is Jeanette LeBlanc, and she's absolutely incredible. She's stunning, she's intelligent, and she's incredibly wise. And I can't wait for you to meet her. So here she is.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome to Hot Topics Live podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I was sitting back there listening and like grinning and blushing all at once.
Oh, I'm so
Very
glad.
sweet.
I'm so glad. So I wanna just find out everything about you. So
Everything. Perfect. Let's go.
absolutely everything. So let's start at the beginning. But tell me, like, what inspired you to become a writer?
Complete and total accident.
Wow, really?
So Cliff's Notes version, I have a science degree.
Uh-huh.
I'm a small town Canadian preacher's daughter. I have a science degree. I got married right out of college. I was a clinical research coordinator. I was a childbirth doula. I was a professional photographer. And all the way along, once when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was living so far from home. So I decided to keep a pregnancy journal online so that my family and friends could read it. And this was back in the very pre-blog early days of the internet. And it found a readership, and I ended up writing for a parenting website. And so, but it was never a career. I was doing all of these other things. And then slowly over time, people started asking me for advice on their writing and asking me for advice on their life, and their writing became a bigger and bigger thing, but there was never any purposeful intention behind it. A brilliant, wonderful, amazing accident.
Wow. So you started sort of as a pre-blogger, like a blogger before blogs were even a thing.
Yeah. Early days.
You know what's really funny about that is I really identify with that. I actually used to write a little blog before blogging was a thing too. And funny enough, it was for a pro wrestling website.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was such a huge pro wrestling fan. I still love pro wrestling, by the way, that I got involved in the industry. But I was very heavily all about female empowerment, which is maybe not the best industry for that. And so I wrote all about what was happening with the women in the industry and what their storylines were and what was happening week to week. So yeah, I did that for like a year. And that was before it was just on someone's website, before blogging was a thing. So I really identify with that. So it was about pregnancy, which is, I think, pretty incredible because a lot of women, I used to belong to this thing called Cafe Mom. I think it's still a
Yes, I
thing.
remember that.
And all of these moms would get together and talk stories about pregnancy and stuff like that. And I feel like it was such a good community for that, if you were a mom that didn't have like pregnant friends with you and you could connect. So I imagine people were loving reading what you were writing.
And now that baby is going to turn 21 next month.
Oh my goodness. That's how the time flies, right?
Time flies.
How the time flies. And so you started writing and you were doing all of these things. How did you end up writing an actual book?
I mean, it's been 21 years almost that I've been writing online, and what the pivotal point when it turned was actually, like I said, I got married young, out of college, and had my babies in my mid 20s. And then at 32, I came out of the closet and left my marriage, and I started searching for someone who was telling a story like mine. So I'm like up late at night on, maybe it wasn't even Google back then, I don't know what search engine, but looking for someone who was whatever we used in 2007, searching for someone who was telling a story like mine, and I couldn't find it. And so I thought, okay, I need to tell it because there's got to be other women or other humans out there searching for someone who is telling the story. So I started an anonymous blog then, which was a really like a no holds barred look at my coming out journey as a preacher's daughter, as a married middle class suburban housewife. And that's the first time I went from mommy blogger to like really pulling back the curtains on life and speaking about the raw and the real and the nitty gritty. And I think it just rolled out from there and the book again was an accident. I thought, who am I to write a book? Like that's something those people over there do, the real writers who went to college and got an MFA. And I posted some quotes online one day and someone said, these should be in a book. And a friend of mine who knew about self-publishing reached out to me and she said, let me help you. You've already done this. You've already written for so many years. Let's pull this book together. And so again, complete serendipity where I just had to say yes.
I love that. I love that. So just people telling you, hey, listen, this is amazing. Because I know when I stumbled upon your Instagram that I was like, wow, this is different and this is amazing. Right. I'm really vibing with these messages. So tell me, like, how did you decide on, because I have so many questions, but first I'm going to ask about the book.
Oh.
How did you decide on the topic of your book?
Well, the title came from, so I had an old kind of column on my blog called Uncommon Sense. So people would write me emails, letters, DMs, and kind of spill out what was on their heart, and I would write them back. And one of them was a friend who had just had a breakup where she was told she was too much. And so I sat down at the keyboard and like madly typed this impassioned essay called You Are Not Too Much. And the line from it is, you are not too much. And if anyone ever tells you you are, basically they are not now and never could have been near enough for you. So that was the grounding in this essay, which kind of went mini viral and got shared a lot. And when I was looking through my work to figure out what's the common theme or how do I want to tie all of these pieces up together, that's the one thing I came back to. And because I think, just like you said in your intro, it's the myth I've lived under for so long. It's what I've believed about myself. It's what I've been told. And so I think naming the book that was like a way to reclaim that for myself.
It's
so
beautiful.
I have it here I can show.
Yes. See, so you are not too much.
Love Notes on Heartache, Redemption, and Reclamation.
I love that so much. I mean, I think a lot of people do. Like, I've heard it before, and I know that I'm a lot. And like that's something that I've known. But now, because of, tons of self-work and healing and podcasts like this one and books like yours, that I have realized that you're absolutely right. It's not that I'm too much. It's that the people I was entertaining were not enough. They couldn't
Right.
handle it. They were ill-equipped in some way. Not to shade them,
Exactly.
they're them and that's okay too, but I'm also okay.
Right.
We are also okay however we are, however we're showing up, whatever we're working through at the time. We're okay. It's good. It's all
Right.
good.
And it's
You
okay to
know?
say that someone or something or a relationship or a job or a place is not in alignment with
Mhm.
your spirit and your soul at the time. And I think it's also true that whenever we believe we're too much something, so the two myths are side by side. I'm too much and I'm not enough. Because if I'm too loud, I'm not quiet enough. If I'm too intense,
Mm.
I'm not calm enough. If I am too demanding, I'm not accepting enough. So there's always these two myths that lie together. So book 2 is going to be called You Are Enough, just so you know.
I couldn't love it more. That's incredible. And that's such a good point because it is, I think there's an epidemic, like hand in hand with the pandemic, the coronavirus and all of that, but there's another epidemic that people don't talk about, and that's this pervasive feeling of not enoughness
Right.
that is like inherent in almost everyone that I've talked to, and everyone that I know has at some point, if not right in this very moment, feels like they're not enough
Mm-hmm.
in some way. And I like to say that you are enough just by the fact that you were born. You are deserving of
Absolutely.
living your best life, of
Absolutely.
having everything you want in life is possible for you if you believe it is and you're willing to go after it, right? And
Can I
so,
read a little poem? Actually, I was just
I
pulling
would love.
together a graphic, and this fits totally with this whole notion of not being enough. Because somewhere along the way, someone, something, some experience we had convinced us we weren't worthy of what we most want and need and desire and dream of. So this poem was something I wrote to someone dear to me who was being tested by that belief of lack of worth.
Mm.
You are worthy. You are worthy of a million love poems. You are worthy of the adulation of the goddess. You are worthy of being showered in rose petals and anointed in oils. You are worthy of the deepest respect, of being raised high, of being met at your lowest. You are worthy of your own survival, the way you have allowed the crucible of this life to make you both softer and stronger with every blow. You are worthy of your holy yes, of sacred space, of surrounding yourself with only those who can immediately see your divinity. You are worthy of mothering the multitudes, of the love of 1,000 holy lovers, of your own gentle touch and tremor and release. You are worthy of the whole wide world. If you are not, you would not be here on this earth at this time. Your light is infinite.
I love that. It's amazing. First of all, I love poetry. Okay. So I'm sure that I was probably a writer in a past life, and I'm drawn to, I love writers wherever they are, authors, writing TV shows. Like I'm very drawn to writers. And I love poetry so much. And it was so beautiful. So I want to say thank you so much for sharing that. It was like an extra bonus. And I think it's dead on. A lot of times when we feel like we're too much, we practice dimming our light
Mhm.
to fit in. And I am always saying, don't dim your light to fit in. Like I've done it. I've done it so many times, making myself small so that other people can feel better.
Mhm.
And it's it comes from a place of caring, but at the same time, it's detrimental to yourself when you do that. Like you deserve to take up space.
Absolutely.
You
Um,
deserve that.
Absolutely. And I think that so many of us were raised in communities and worlds and families and religions where taking up too much space, being too loud, calling too much attention to ourselves was something we were told was not acceptable. So we learned to kind of be in the shadows and to not stand tall in our own light, because that was not seen as something necessarily wanted or desired or thought well of.
Yeah, it's true. And it's really hard to reprogram that when you that's your internal voice. It's could
Mhm.
be even at a subconscious level, you know, and you have to change that. You have to reprogram that out in order to be the best version of yourself and to be who you would have been without these inputs that we received along the way. So
Yes.
which
Who were you before the world tried to talk you out of yourself?
Exactly. And that's amazing. And it actually brings me to a question that I have for you.
Okay.
So you mentioned earlier that you grew up in Canada, you were a preacher's daughter, and then you did all of these things that we all think in society we're supposed to do, right? We meet someone, we fall in love, we get married, we have children, and we go through all this process. And you did this, I did this older, you did this quite young,
I
right?
did it very young.
But you got to a point of your life where you realized that you were not living your truth, like you were not authentically who you are.
Mhm.
So then you came out, right?
Mhm.
So what was that process like for you, especially as a preacher's daughter? Because when you add religion on top of all of that is enough. Like that's difficult enough of a journey to have to and first go through on your own inside, and then to put out into the world to deal with your family, your spouse, like everybody. But then you add this layer of I have organized religion on top of it. So I want to find out from you, how did you get through all that?
I mean, I think when it comes down to any major transition we take on in life, we get to this crossroads where we're going to lose our lives as we know them,
Mhm.
which it could be a family, job, religion, whatever that friendships, whatever that thing is, or we're going to lose ourselves. And I think that a lot of the times we do lose ourselves for a while in the process. And that becomes like some kind of acceptable collateral damage to hold things together. And then we get to a point where we can't anymore. We can't lose any more pieces of ourselves, or continuing down that road is going to obliterate something in our souls that we're just not willing to let go of.
Mhm.
And I think when you stand at that crossroads, you know, and it might be as big as leaving your marriage or leaving a religion, or it might be a small thing like leaving a job or ending a shorter term relationship. But there's always this crossroads moment where you push it off and you push it off and you push it off, and then you're like, oh no, now is the time. And if I stay, I'm going to lose something I can't get back.
Yeah.
And I also think, as a mother of daughters, I have a responsibility to them to show them. Like, I often, when I get to those twisty places where I don't know what to do, I think, if they came to me looking for advice in this situation, what would I tell them to do in 10, 20, 30 years? What would feel like the most true path to their growth and evolution and to their spirits as a person? Would it be taking the safe and easy choice? Or would it be doing this big, bold thing that, yes, has repercussions, but it's going to ultimately be the most true thing for them? So it was the hardest, most heartbreaking few years of my life. Absolutely. There's still self-forgiveness work I need to do. There's still guilt I hold. Um, I'm not going to say, I can't wrap it up in this bold bow and say I did this brave, bold thing, and now everything was wonderful and pretty. It was hard.
Mhm.
It absolutely was. It required me, because when you come out, and I use that not to just mean come out sexuality, when you come out and you tell the truth about yourself, which we all do in a million different ways, no matter what the situation is, you don't just do it once. You get to do it again and again and again and again with every new person or every new job or every new relationship. And there's always risk involved in being true.
Yeah. And there is that fact, and it's not always well received
No.
either. So how do you and I have a question for Kala. So I see your question, honey. I'm gonna get to it. But I want to know, how do you manage other people's responses to your truth? Like how do you sort of deal with the different responses that you get to being in this moment where you're going, I am at this crossroads, whatever it is. Like you said, it could be something just like leaving a job or leaving a marriage or whatever, or telling your parents you want to drop out of college, like whatever it is, how do you manage that moment where you have to speak your truth?
I think there's so many layers to that question. Number one, we're not always going to manage it gracefully.
That's true.
So start off, give yourself like 8,000 layers of permission to mess it up and to be raw and ugly and messy. And I am not also a person I would love to be. My alter ego is one of those no fucks given people. Smoker, leather jacket wearer, she doesn't care. I actually give all the fucks all the time. So I do take things to heart. And it does, of course it hurts when it's not well received. Or when I've lost people along the way. I've lost relationships from this truth. I've lost friendships. I've sidelined career opportunities because I don't hold back. But I think it keeps coming back to what's the greater loss? Losing whatever this is out here that I'm saying no to, or is it losing me? And I think as long as I keep turning back to myself, what is the most true thing for me in that moment? And building this, I have a friend who, she's a self-intimacy coach. Her name is Jessamine, and she talks about building a case for trusting yourself, which is one of the most beautiful practices I think anyone can do. And over time, if you start, and we don't always have to start with these great, big, giant, earth-shaking truths. Like we can start with really small truths and build our capacity for that. And as we do, and as we stay with ourselves through those processes, our bodies, our brains, our hearts, our spirits learn, okay, I can trust myself to stay. Not in the relationship or the job or the marriage or the church, but I can trust myself to stay here. And then you get a little braver and you get a little more able to hold whatever comes back at you.
Yeah. I love that. It's a lot of being self-trust. Like, people, we talk about self-love. I love it. And I'm all about that. I'm on that bandwagon, honey. Love yourself first. I know. It's not always that simple, but it's true. It's very important to fall in love with yourself. But there's another piece to that that we don't always talk about, and that's the self-trust. And being able to trust yourself, to show up for yourself, to advocate for yourself, to speak your truth, to hold your boundaries, and all of these things it's like a beautiful thing what your friend does, because a lot of us somewhere along the way, our trust in ourselves got shaken because a few too many times we didn't take a stand, or we kept our mouth closed when we should have spoke up, or we let that person press our boundary when we should have held it strong. And so we lose trust in our own ability to show up for ourselves. But that's also self-love. So I think they go together, and building that, like you said, is amazing because it's little by little. Every little time every time you took away from a little thing, you can put it back that same way by showing up for yourself, building that trust.
And I think that so many of us we were taught to place our trust in outside institutions. So in our elders, in our community leaders and politicians and teachers and whatever external authority, preachers, the government, whatever it is, like we are taught that authority exists out there, and taking that back is not easy. To like actually learn to trust in this authority, to be willing to break your own heart in order to stay true to yourself is one of the biggest and hardest things. But I think it's also important that we I get my clients, so I have coaching clients, sovereignty coaching clients, and I have them actually write down like lists from large to small of all of the ways that they have survived, all the things that they have done, that they have made it through.
It's amazing.
It is incredibly powerful. And then you look, okay, I'm still standing here despite all of these things. So maybe actually, even though I think I've betrayed myself and I've self-abandoned and I've walked away and I haven't trusted myself, if I'm still here and standing after all of that, then maybe actually I have built a case to trust myself. Maybe actually that bedrock and that foundation is there. And maybe actually nobody can take that away from me.
Right. Who can take it? Right. Nobody.
But you
That's
have to
amazing.
actually go into the things and give yourself credit. You have to be willing to give yourself credit, not just for the bad shit,
Mm-hmm.
but actually for how much you've made it through. How many times you have stayed with yourself, or how many times you've returned to yourself after you've left.
That's just gorgeous energy. I just always think about that saying that you survived 100% of your worst days, and it's so true. But we often forget, and we get stuck in our heads with the perspective that's negative, right?
Mhm.
And that's like we're thinking about all of our faults
Right.
instead of all of the things that we're brilliant and amazing and talented and wonderful.
Right.
It's I guess is it that they say that negativity is infectious and it spreads faster than positivity, right? But if thoughts are these great powerful things that everyone is telling us they are, with all of the new age science and the quantum physics and everything, if our thoughts create and they're so powerful, then it is crucial to our well-being to shift that story we're telling ourselves from looking at everything that's wrong with us. We got the whole world trying to point out what's wrong with us. The one person who should be constantly reminding you of what's right is you.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
And then I want to say with that too, we've got to, I will always bring it back to giving yourself grace, which I'm not always good at. Like my closest friends will tell you sometimes I need to give myself way more grace. And I'm the one who's hardest on myself, just like we all
Mhm.
are. We
Yeah.
are evolutionarily primed to pay attention to the negative. So if we're in the cave back thousands of years ago, sure, there might be beautiful flowers outside the door, but the tiger at the entrance to the cave is a way bigger deal as far as survival. Like our brains, our bodies, our physiology is made to make the big scary things bigger and scarier because that's how we stayed alive.
Mhm.
So to be able to bring it back to focus on the goodness, like, there's a lot of that spiritual bypassing stuff that says you choose your thoughts, you choose your reality, you have to focus. That's really actually, you're working against a lot of the evolution of us as humans to do that. It takes a lot. So you're going to mess it up. You're going to make
Mhm.
the tiger bigger than the flowers again and again and again. You've got to consciously work really hard to put your attention on those flowers without ignoring the tiger because the tiger's still real.
Right.
Right. But there's also incredible evidence out there about neuroplasticity. We can change those pathways in our brain. We can rewire, we can lay a new ground that we follow, but it takes work. And it takes a whole lot of being graceful with how messy and how interrupted and how cyclical that process is.
That's so true. And I love that you use the word grace because it has so much depth and meaning, and it's the perfect word to use. And I want to ask you a question about it. But first, I promised Kaula I
Okay.
would post her question. And for those of you listening to this in its podcast form, this is Kaula's question. She says, how to deal with the noise inside our head and step away from it. So I think that's what she wants to know.
Oh, my head is so noisy. So noisy. I think, gosh, there's so many layers to this. Where do I go? I think that the main thing comes from me too in acknowledging, okay, I'm a deep thinker. I am the too much girl. I'm an intense person. I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of feelings. I am barely contained in my skin a lot of the time. I'm not going to probably change that in this lifetime, and I don't think I want to. So it's not like I'm ever going to be able to find some meditation or yoga practice that's going to completely silence this all and make everything settle down so I can go back to living on the surface and just existing this pretty easy life. I don't think it's the way I'm made. I don't know if it's the way you're made or the way she's made or not. But I
Mm-mm.
do think that part of this whole practice of trusting ourselves and coming home to ourselves is learning what does make it a little quieter in there. What does bring the noise up from here down to here? So for me, I need to go out and hike in the desert and like push myself hard. I need the yoga mat. I need to sometimes I have 3 long hot showers a day. Those are not prescriptions that I can give to someone else. They're my things that keep my brain from being at war with me. So I'd be curious to know if you want to comment in. What are the things you already know? I'm guessing if you've been alive for a while on this earth, you have some things where you know, if I do this thing, I maybe get just 5% more peace in the day. So how can you take that 5% more peace and make it bigger? How can you expand it? What can you do with it? And I'd love to hear your answer too, actually.
Mhm. Kaula, if you're still with us, I know she's not feeling well today. Make sure that you comment and let us know, and I'll bring it in when I see it. So, but in the meantime, I want to find out another question from you. You were talking about grace and giving yourself this grace, and I want to find out, like, what are some of the steps that we can do to give ourselves this grace?
Well, that's a really good question. And first off, I know, so I tend to use a lot of like religious biblical language still. It's like baked in my bones. And I know that not everyone resonates with the words like holiness or grace. Or so I want to say, when it comes to words, pick the word that fits for you. So if grace isn't it, maybe it's forgiveness or it's gentleness or it's softness. I taken the words from the religion I was raised with and kind of made them my own. But I don't want anyone to get locked in by a word because a lot of people have trauma around these words and around religion and around that, all of that. So the practice of giving ourselves grace, it's so multi-layered. I mean, for me, I find it a lot in writing. So a lot of my writing, it may sound like I'm really sure of myself. So that poem, You Are Worthy, it may sound like I already have learned that lesson and I know that. And I am solidly grounded in my worth. Quite likely, when I wrote that, I was grappling with my worth. And so I was taking a voice, almost like a voice outside of me, speaking back to me and reminding me of myself. So for me, a lot of that grace is found in writing. It's kind of the truth that we know here, like deep down in our gut truth, but we're not always living from it up here. Like we can't always grasp it. So for me, my words are a path to doing that. Intimate relationships with people that I can trust to lay myself out and to mirror. I write a lot about choosing your mirrors wisely and choosing kinder mirrors for yourself. A lot of the times I think we choose like funhouse mirrors. We choose people who reflect back, people, places, jobs, relationships that reflect back the worst of ourselves or our own worst suspicions about ourselves. So for me, a lot of grace comes from choosing the places and people who see me as beautiful, who see my best self, who will remind me when I can't find that of what they see in me. I had a partner once, and she taught me a huge lesson because I would stand in the mirror and I would berate myself, right? The opposite of giving myself grace. I was finding fault with everything. And she said, be careful. That's the woman I love you're talking about. And I remember standing there one day and going, oh, I would never, ever stand in front of a mirror and say that to her or to my daughters or to the people I love. Mm-hmm. So now I think it to myself, be careful. That's the woman I love you're talking about.
That's beautiful. I do love that. I love that. It's so beautiful. I am huge into mirror work, right? As part of, and when I'm doing coaching and things, I often tell people to get in front of the mirror, right? And find something you love about yourself and build out from there, but also talk to yourself. So I am, my kids do it too now. We all are in the mirror talking to ourselves and telling ourselves positive affirmations, right? That's part of my practice. It's one of the ways I quiet the noise in my head. And I love that. And I always tell them, talk to yourself like you're talking to your best friend, because just like you said, we often say the worst, most heinous, awful things to ourselves. We think it or we say it out loud, and words are very powerful. Thoughts and words, very powerful back in the day. That's why they called them spells, right? They were words, right? So when you're speaking these things to yourself in the mirrors also can be considered in some circles a divination tool. So when you're saying these things to yourself, it's very powerful. What are you going to say? Would you talk to your friend like that? Your daughter, my sons? I would never say some of the things that I have said to myself or about myself. in the past. And I even get to the point where now I used to say things like, if I made a mistake, oh, that was so stupid. I'm so stupid. And I will never say anything like that now. And I would like to encourage everybody to be conscious of what you're saying about yourself, because it's so important to speak love into
Yes.
yourself and appreciation, you know, into yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have one prompt that basically is, what would someone who loves me deeply choose for me right now, or say to me right now? And one of the prints in my shop says that all words are incantations, even the ones we don't say out loud.
I love that. I love that. Very powerful message
Yeah.
behind that, and reminder to be conscious
Mm-hmm.
of what you're thinking and saying about yourself. Because I think that we all have stories that we tell ourselves about
Absolutely.
ourselves and about other people. And it's a powerful attraction. So you're attracting that in. So if I am convinced that this person is a horrible person, then that's what's going to show up in my experience. I'm going to find the evidence to prove that to myself over and over if I'm telling myself this story. And I've tested this many times in my own life. It works for me. I don't know about you, but if I shift the narrative about myself or someone else, oftentimes what I see happen in my reality and my physical experience will change as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's incredible how powerful these things are.
Yeah. And I want to go back again and say, I don't ever think it's as easy as saying some positive affirmations and
No.
boom, the story is switched in your brain.
Mm-mm.
I think that whatever you believe around law of attraction, it's much more nuanced and fine-tuned than that. And when we're dealing with stories that relate to deep trauma, they're not going to be so easy to replace. So the first step might be just recognizing that a story exists, or that many possible stories exist, so that that there are other options here, kind of like a choose your own adventure book. Like, is this the only thing that might be true?
Mm-hmm.
Are there other possibilities that you could just play with and be curious about being true? So if this one negative belief that you're holding, you believe is true, is there another option that might be in some other parallel universe true? Okay, can you sit with that for a little minute?
Oh, I love that. This is gorgeous.
Because we cannot undo deep trauma that we're carrying somatically in our bodies with a positive affirmation.
Right.
Right? Like it's there's so much more work that goes into undoing that. But yeah, I think that finding grace sometimes is recognizing. I texted a friend yesterday, and this was a money story, and I told her, I'm living in this story. And I didn't have the strength or the space in me to undo the story yesterday, but I said out loud to someone that I was inside of a story. That was enough to create like a little distance between me and what I was telling myself. It didn't make it all go away. It didn't make the situation better, but I created enough distance to not be inside of it anymore.
I think that's critical, because I do think a lot of the language is misunderstood. Like, it's like, oh, if you think this and immediately everything changes. It's not. There is a lot of work that like I said at the beginning of the show, like, I had a very rough upbringing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of trauma that went with that. This is not something that you can just, you know, at the blink of an eye be fine from. There is a lot of work that has to go into it. But the thing is first you have to know that it's possible.
Yeah.
You have to start with something small,
Mm-hmm.
shifting your story, acknowledging you're in that story that you're telling yourself, you know, but that's the path forward, and to create that better experience for yourself, and to find grace and peace and just feel better. Cause I think that's what it's about. A lot of us just don't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we might be searching for something to just help us feel that little bit better. So it's worth looking into.
And I think that, you know, if someone's showing up to my work or showing up to your podcast, from what I can tell so far, is they are likely searchers and seekers, which means that there is this underlying tension in those of us who are not just satisfied with the status quo. And that tension can be really uncomfortable to hold. Like I've sometimes looked out there and go, I wish I could be like my neighbors who just seem chill with whatever's happening, and they're not doing deep dives into self-work and healing.
Yeah.
And
It's a lot.
not the way I was made, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that tension is what is necessary to keep us pushing forward. It's what creates art. It's what makes us dive deeper. It's what makes us learn. It's what makes us grow. And it is what drives the healing. Like that tension, making friends with it to whatever extent that you can is really vital, I think, to continuing on that path.
I agree with you. I mean, there's just it's a lot of work, but it's so worth it because as you go through the levels of healing and you go through all of these layers, it gives you such a peace and such a happiness, and it's like waking up one day in a different world, like and at every level of healing that you're doing, it's like you've completely changed your reality from one reality, and then one day you realize everything's different. You're different. Your whole life is different. I mean, you're a perfect example of that. One day you were this mom, the suburban wife, you know what I mean? The next day you stepped into your truth. You did, and I mean, it's clearly anyone who's lived any portion of life to an extent has experienced things that are difficult and can understand how difficult that must have been for you, that transition. It wasn't like you went to bed one day, this woman, and you woke up one
Right.
day just comfortably, happily living this life. There was a lot of internal work and processing that you had to do to realize what was going on with you and then what needed to happen in order for you to be living your best, most fulfilling life for you. And then making that choice despite what anyone else would be thinking. That's tremendously hard.
It is. And we all do it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what I want people to think. I think that like big transitions like that one of mine get more attention. And so people say, oh, you're so brave or so bold. We all do this. We do this over and over and over again. Like that is what living is. And you mentioned levels of healing and things changing. And I think another thing that I think is really important is what can be so hard to hold and so feel like the opposite of grace is after you go through this big, profound transition and you do all the self-work and you do the healing, you think, okay, I've arrived at the next level, right? I've made it to the next level of the video game of life.
Yeah.
And you're coasting along, it's fine. And then suddenly some of those old things come back at you. Right.
Yes.
So I am a recovering codependent. I have been working on this forever. Boundaries are the work of my life. And I'm amazingly far from where I was. But just last week, I spun back into this codependent, anxious attachment little space, and I don't know where it came from. But and the self-talk then was not very kind, right? I'm directing the self-talk. I'm supposed to be further than this. I've learned these lessons. I've gotten past this. Even though what I know to be true is healing does operate like this. It doesn't actually level. Like it's a cycle, but what we're trying to do is make those cycles smaller and tighter so that we come back to ourselves more quickly. We come back to ourselves more gracefully. We don't fumble for so long off the beaten path. And so I think that's part of what allows me to give myself grace too, is to stopping thinking of healing as this upward trend or I get somewhere and then I'm done. What I'm looking for is the fact that maybe I stayed in that codependent, anxious space just a little bit less time than I did last time. Maybe I recognized it faster. Maybe I was able to talk myself through it better. Maybe I asked for help sooner. Those are the things that tell me I am on the healing journey, not that I'm never going to grapple with those demons again. Because I think that's bullshit.
I agree with you. Right? I do. Healing is not linear. I mean, I am such a I love research, and I love that you have a science degree, by the way. I love science, but I love research. And when my mother passed away, the first thing I did was get out my phone and start researching the grief cycle. I'm like, right. I need to understand what's about to happen to me, what I'm going through, and how this is going to process, and each phase along the way, right? So I wanted to understand this pain I was going through. And then I realized that grief or any healing is not linear. It doesn't go in this trajectory. It goes, and sometimes, and it's all over the place, right? And some days are good and some days are bad. And sometimes I'm really kind to myself. And some days I slip and I say something really mean, or I'm extra hard on myself. But it's like you said, it's like knowing that you're doing your best. I
Mhm.
actually, I realize right now why I'm here with you today. Other than I saw your Instagram and loved it and was like, I gotta have I want to know everything about this woman. She's incredible. But like, when you said that you slipped into an anxious attachment style and you thought, oh my God, I should have been further along than this. I just
Mm.
did an episode with my friend who's a relationship coach in the UK. And we were talking about attachment styles and these things. And in this episode, you can find it on my YouTube or you can find it on my podcast or Facebook page if you haven't seen it. But I was talking to her about this very thing, right? Like I started dating and then this particular person had me all over the place and
Mhm.
she said to me after the show, which people didn't see, was you don't strike me as an anxious, you strike me as a really secure attacher. And I was like, but I am. But I wasn't always, right? And what happened with this particular situation was it triggered that old stuff to come back up. And I was just like you. So it's such a great comfort. So that thank you, by the
Right.
way.
Isn't it so great? I mean, I think that that's what drives my writing is if someone finds a piece that I've written and feels a little less alone and a
Mhm.
little more like we have company on this really complex fuckery of being human.
Yeah.
Like, because it's, sometimes it does. It's like, wow, I'm still working with this stuff. Well, that's dumb.
I mean, really,
Out.
I should be so much further along than this.
Right. And maybe I need to write that book. I should be so much further along than this.
Yeah, there you go.
But if we can actually speak about these things out loud and we're not alone in them and we're not alone in that funhouse mirror head of ours making up these stories, then we can actually sit back and go, okay, this isn't just me. This is not my broken pieces. This is not me as a fuck up. This is actually part of being human. I did
Mhm.
another podcast a few months ago with a woman named Morgan Wade. It's a beautiful podcast. And she shared a quote about how this healing journey is, and I might mess this up, but she said, we're returning to the cage to find a better way out.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. I'm instantly drawn to like I used to love mazes. I still love
Mhm.
mazes. But you know how I used to they'd come in those activity books and you'd have to
Yes.
find your way out.
Yeah.
And I just am instantly was taken there of like, I
Mhm.
need to find a better way. Like that's
Right.
beautiful. Mhm.
So we come back and if we can accept that and go, okay, my task here is to find a better, faster, easier, more graceful, softer way out. Like maybe I'm not trying to squeeze my whole body through the bars. Maybe actually there's an opening I didn't see last time.
Yeah.
Maybe the door isn't even locked anymore, but we
Yeah.
think it is because we've been locked in that cage before. So yeah, when Morgan said that, that was like one of those light bulb moments in my mind
It's
where
beautiful.
everything made more sense.
It does make a lot of sense. And I think that, sometimes we just, if we find those people that that resonates and you can
Mhm.
say, like my friend said, oh, well, you got triggered into an anxious attachment style. That's
Mhm.
okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that happens. And I just was so being so hard on myself because I was like, where did this come from? I'm not like 15. Like it's
I
just
think we are all 15 inside somewhere. I don't
somewhere.
know
But
who's listening, but if anyone agrees with me, yeah.
me. And you know what else I realized too is that I'm oftentimes, and I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but I'm oftentimes we always hear your inner child, and
Mhm.
clearing the wounding of your inner child. Well, sometimes your inner child is 15,
Yeah.
right? And that
Sometimes they're a whiny, petulant teenager who is upside down with hormones and has no idea what way to go.
Mhm. Absolutely. So I love that you said that. It is, I think, so important because we are sometimes all over the place on this journey. It
Mhm.
is a journey.
It's
Sometimes we
messy.
take two steps back to move one step forward. You know what I mean? It's all over the place, but it's nice to know that there are people with a voice that are
Mhm.
sharing the things that we sometimes don't know exactly how to share or how to say. Is what I love about your writing. And in fact, I am going to put this up here really quick. And I am on your Instagram right now.
Okay.
And I hope you don't mind, but I want to share some of the things that I've read on there that resonated with me.
Of
So,
course. Thank you.
and so this one, you bet I'm wild. Okay. Yes. And I will no longer be apologizing for that. Thank you.
I put up this anonymous question thing in my story, and people could ask me questions anonymously. And one of them came in twice, and it just said, "You wild for what you did." And I read it, and I thought, "Oh, okay, I got something to say to this."
Yeah, I am wild.
Yeah,
Yes.
you really am.
Don't rush your grief.
Mm-hmm.
We are grieving often, more than we realize. Like
Yes.
even the little things that we grieve. My
Ugh.
rabbit went missing. Okay,
We
I'm
could do a
grieving.
whole podcast on that truth. We are grieving often.
Yes, we are grieving
And
often.
we think that what's deserving of grief, or like grief that can be recognized, is the big thing. So yeah, like your rabbit dying is a thing that you can point to.
She ran
And say,
away.
I am so sorry. That's
I
like
can't find
truly
her.
awful. That's very, but that must be so sad for
Too
your
sad.
kids. Like that's a real thing.
They don't care. I care.
Oh, well, I'm sorry
I'm the
for
one who's heartbroken here. No, I'm sure they care at some
they do.
level, but I mean, but it's like you said, it's very sad, and we are grieving. It's a
But
little thing.
there's all of these tiny griefs and all of these little minuscule letting goes that the world doesn't see, or that the world doesn't recognize as worthy. And when we don't give ourselves space to grieve those things, when we push them down and away, they come back at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Like they will come back for you.
No one escapes it.
Nobody.
Mm-mm. So,
human condition.
And you never know. And I love this saying. It's like, you never know what someone else is going through, so be kind. I'm like, I love that saying because it's true. Most people are grieving something.
Absolutely.
And you have no idea what they're going through. You know, I remember, this sticks out in my mind because it was so traumatic for me, but it's a very small thing. I was on my way to the emergency room, and I was frantic because my son wasn't breathing well. And I turned, he was very small. He was not even 1 year old. Okay. And I was rushing my son to the emergency room, and I turned. The parking lot is on one side is very small. I needed to park. There were no parking. I should have just pulled in and just left and ran in. But I was, of course, doing what I thought I was supposed to do, right? And parking. I turned down the aisle the wrong way, and this woman was walking and saw that I turned down a up or whatever direction I went. And she said something. I don't know what she said because my windows were closed, but she looked at me, gave me a very nasty look, and said something very nasty and loud in my direction as I'm on my way to rush my child to the emergency room, completely distraught, barely holding it together, and probably still full of pregnancy hormones because he wasn't yet 1 year old. And I thought to myself in that moment, that is a sad human being.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for her that she's so triggered by something so little, and she has no idea what I'm going through right now. How awful. But it stuck with me enough to tell it to you today, because you never know what someone else is going through. And most people are grieving something in their life: a loss of a job, a loss of a beloved pet, a loss of a friendship, a loss of a relationship.
A distance from self.
Yeah, losing themselves. That is probably the biggest one that most people are going through. And so it's really sad. And I love that we need to recognize that people are grieving, and you can't rush it. It takes as long as it's going to take.
Yep.
You know, absolutely. I love that one. You mentioned this one earlier, which I loved. Choose your mirrors wisely. No truer words spoken, especially relationships.
Yes.
Okay. If you're going to involve your heart, choose that mirror very carefully. I would say, stay open, please. That's another one I absolutely love. And I just love this. It says, this one's a little bit longer. It says, dear heart, Do not give in to the lure to lay your book of fairy tales down on a bed made of wishes and imagination. Girl, can we just unpack that?
All right, what do you want to unpack? Let's do it.
Like this, like what was on your mind when you wrote that?
Well, I think that so often we create, again, so like there's stories, right? We create stories about what we want or what we can have or what is available to us that are based on potential or possibility or make believe, and we invest and we throw ourselves in to this story we have created about relationship, job, whatever the thing is. Our children, I think we do it to our children too. That it's not based on what's actually really possible or what the other person is able to show up for or what they're telling us they want or have capacity for. And when we do that, when we twist ourselves around this story that's not really available to us and throw our hearts and our souls and our work into the ring for something that was never actually there, then we lose all of the potential that could have been for what's actually real and in front of us and available to us. Yeah, that's a big one.
Deep. That's deep. That has a lot of layers.
Like we need 3 more podcasts.
Yes, that's a whole. Stay tuned for the next one where we're gonna talk completely about that and just go into it.
Totally.
And here's one that's actually really dear to my heart, and I apologize if it offends anyone, but I'm doing it because it means something to me. It says here, I didn't have an abortion, but I would have. Something. So a lot of my audience is in Europe, so you don't have to deal with this. But here in the United States, where we both are, this is a really big deal. And I feel exactly like that.
Mm-hmm. And when this all happened, when Roe v. Wade got overturned, there was one of these decisions. And I've done this writing online for 21 years. And I've said before that my goal is to write my way out of all the closets. So there's nothing left I can't say. And for the most part, I've done that. I speak about sex. I speak about, desire. I talk about sexuality and relationships and non-monogamy and all kinds of things. But there are still things that are hard to write about. And something, stories I'd never told before, which took me back to high school, to non-consensual sex and to thinking I was pregnant in high school, and even to something that happened a few years ago. And it was one of those times where I thought, I've got to write this essay. Like I understand my responsibility as a writer and as someone who has a platform where I can speak truth without reprisal. Like I don't have to worry about losing a job or losing a family or losing a partner or losing church. I've already gotten my way out of all of those boxes where I had limitations. So I have freedoms that others don't have. And so I can tell this story, which means that I have to show up to this story. And so I wrote an essay really raw and bare about these 3 times in my life where I didn't end up needing to have an abortion, but I absolutely would have. And 21 years later, it's still scary to write like that. It's still not easy. As much practice as I have at being raw and vulnerable, there are still some places where I go, okay, you're going to push publish. And so I texted my children. I said, okay, this thing is going live. You can choose to read or not. But here you go. They're the only people where I still place caveats and I still try to give them heads up and warning. The rest of the world can just deal, including my parents. But yeah, that felt like a really important truth to share. Because I would have. Those 3 times in my life, I absolutely would have.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I have been lucky. So there isn't a time in my life that I was faced with that. I mean, there was a moment where someone asked me if I wanted to, and I opted no, right? I did the whole having the baby and all of that. But had there been a moment, I absolutely am pro-choice. Like I believe that it's not black and white. Do I believe in adoption? Sure, but there's issues with that too. I have a friend that's adopted. She is very vocal about her experience, and it's not always the best, we'll say. So there's it's not black and white for any of these. Do I believe in other options? Absolutely. But that's what pro-choice is about. It's the right to choose. And also, I really rather like having autonomy over my own body.
Absolutely.
Okay. As a woman, we are magical, incredible beings. Try to prove me wrong. We bring life into the world. We are literally the
Mhm.
portal of life. Okay. But at the same time, is it really about life if after a child is born, there's no more care? We have to care as much about the born child as the
Yeah,
unborn one. So that's all I'm going to do on that soapbox, but it needed to be said
it does. Yeah.
because I saw this on here and I felt like it moved me. And I thought, and I want to ask her about that because
Mhm.
I feel like that too. And
Yeah.
there's so many more. I mean, romanticize your own ordinary life. I'm about that.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, yes, do I follow Kim Kardashian? Yeah. Okay, I do. I like to see her jet setting off. But you know what? Who else jet sets off in her own way? Me. I love it.
Mhm.
I'm going to Armenia at the end of the month. Okay.
Wow, look at
I
that.
do. My life is ordinary. I'm an everyday girl. I do this podcast because I love people. I love meeting people
Mhm.
and I love putting out good energy into the world. And if and as you said earlier, if it impacts someone, if it affects them, if it changes their life in a positive way, if
Right.
they listen to just the first 5 minutes and they hear me say, "You are amazing," and it resonates and it hits
Yeah.
them some way, then I've done my job here.
Mhm.
This is what I'm here for. But my life is ordinary. My kids, my pets, I'm down one. But like I still have my dog and like I just make this the most beautiful life possible for me. And I
Yeah.
think that's important. So what is your intention behind this message?
I think, I mean, again, it's a reminder to me, right?
Mhm.
There are lots of places in life where I wish I could travel more. I wish I had more freedom in life currently. I wish it were easier to make a living with art.
Mm,
I
it's
wish a
true.
lot of things. Like life can feel really small. And I'm a big wanderlust adventurous soul. Like I want to be traipsing the globe. I want to be having wild love affairs. I want to be doing all of that. And life can feel
Yeah.
really small and kind of boring and like you said, ordinary. And every so often I have to remind myself to slow down and to like actually make every move into some kind of seduction or offering or love
Mm,
affair with my own life. Like, how can I be intentional with the life that I have so that I'm not chafing at the bits all the time? Because there are very real things that I can't change right now. I have a
mhm.
ton of freedom and a ton of privilege, and I can't go jet setting off across the globe.
Right.
So what can I do in this one little life that I have to bring beauty into it? Can I buy myself flowers? Can I slow down while I have my coffee in the morning? Can I make my bedroom more of a sanctuary? Like what are these small little things I can do? When I see my partner, can I be intentional and look them in the eye and like soak in the magic that we have together instead of just rushing through something? What little things can I do to bring that magic and that romance into the life that I actually have, not the one that I dream of?
Oh my God. That is such a good one. One more. So
Okay.
we're at an hour and I want to be conscious of your time, but I want to do one more. There's so many. So go to Jeanette's Instagram and follow her yourself. It's there on the screen. Just go type it in. I know Lynn's already, hey, Lynn's girl. Lynn's already said she's doing it. She said you're a whole vibe. I love that. It's true. I felt that way too. George went to follow you too. I love that too. So I'm sure so many other people will. But this one, it said, and I know this one is one you wrote to yourself. It says, "Dear self, you already know."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Most of the time, when you have twisted and turned around a decision or a possibility, deep down, you knew what was going to happen.
Hmm.
You knew what you needed to do. You knew what you wanted to do. You knew how this is going to turn out. But we like to make bargains. We like to twist ourselves into knots trying to pull things together. But I think when I look back, almost every time, like the deepest part of me knew. And the more I can learn to trust in that. And again, doesn't mean I'm going to immediately know and take action. giving myself grace there too. But if I can shorten the time between knowing and acting, then maybe I'm getting somewhere.
I agree. A lot of times we don't trust our intuition.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me, it's been a journey for me to get there, to go, I already know what's going to happen here. I'm shocked when I don't know now. Like
Yeah.
when I completely and I'm like, wow, I really expected that to go this way. And it went that way. That's so surprising. Like I didn't expect that to happen. But 9 out of 10, honey, I'm like, I knew. How did and it took me probably a good, I don't know, 20 years to finally go, you know what, I know, and I'm okay that I know, and I trust that I know, and I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna actually
that's
listen.
The tough part. The listening and the acting on the knowing is the hard part for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, of all the things that my gut told me and I didn't listen to, I mean, I probably have a completely different life.
Absolutely.
And even better, I'm not complaining, but it could have been even better had I just listened. Save myself a little bit of heartache, a little bit of drama, a little, here and there. So,
and yet all of those things are what made you who you are. So they're all for a purpose too. Before we go, I don't know if you, or if I know we've got maybe some live listeners, if you wanted to give me a page to read from the book, or I don't know if you know, but the book is also a card deck.
So stop playing. No, okay. First of all, I just had a tarot reader on here.
All right.
And you have not seen that episode, and we love cards.
All right. Should I pull you a card?
Absolutely. Okay,
else, I can see the comments popping up. So if anyone else wants a card, I can.
Linz, are you here? You should get a card. George, get a card. You guys want a card?
All right.
Anybody else? If you want a
card, one for
you
first. Let's see which one we got. This is an invitation. Enter your life now. Build a home inside your hollow. Cast a spell into the ether. Evoke your own divinity. Turn the music up loud. Let it build. Feel the reverb settle deep in your bones until your spirit pulsates, until the heat of it permeates your entire existence. Listen, you starlight seeker. Listen, you jackhammer goddess. You've been holding on tightly to things no longer yours. Loosen your grip, lover. Ease open your palms. Come out with your hands up. This is not an arrest. This is the beginning, and you must not be tamed.
Ooh. It's a whole vibe. So everyone's saying yes cards, please.
All right. So Lindsay, is it Lindsay?
Jackhammer Goddess, yes. Lindsay and George, they both love cards.
Lindsay, be gentle, pay attention. Offer purposeful healing. Seek equilibrium. Unfreeze slowly. Stretch yourself out into the world. Let your eyes calibrate to this new light and notice how it caresses the lines and curves and soft and hard of you. Allow your mouth to twist and stumble around new shapes. Be so very sensory. Notice everything from every angle. The way your bones feel, the way you orient to space and time. Invite your whole being into this new way of living, into the totality and wholeness of it. Let it be strange and uncomfortable and painful and stiff. Let it be magical and novel and unfamiliar and entirely wonderful. Follow the whispers where they lead. So that's this one.
Ooh, girl.
All right, I'm sorry. Let's see.
One more.
Oh, this is a shorter one. Accept that all will be revealed in time. Know that you are the most perfect, most beautiful, most inspiring person I have ever known.
That's for you, George. No, that's all we have time for today. I want to wrap it up, but before I do, I want you to tell us about your merch and where we can get your book and where we can just be all up in your energy.
All up in my energy. Instagram is the place I show up the most on social media, so follow me there for sure. My website is just JeanetteLeBlanc.com, and my Etsy shop, I don't know if it's easier if I can type it in the chat or what.
Type it to me and I'll put it in the private chat, and then I'll put it. And you are at JeanetteLeBlanc.com.
And so the book, the cards, there's tons and tons of prints. We just added mugs and shirts and journals.
Ooh.
So there's all kinds of fun stuff there.
And so we can go to your Etsy shop. We can buy those cards
Yes,
too.
you can buy the cards, you can buy the book, you can buy all of the things. I also,
Oh,
one of my
good.
most fun things to do, I have a mystery print bundle. So if you write me a letter that tells me what's going on in your life and what things, then I will like hand select prints and goodies for you.
Nice. I want to put that up there. It keeps going. So that's your website, right?
Yes, that's my website.
Okay, so then you can go to the website and check everything out. I'm so excited for all of your stuff to get the book. Let's see what else can I put up here for you. We're gonna put up your Etsy shop as well while we're wrapping up the show. But I want to tell you, like, really, I think you're an amazing writer. I love just what comes out of you. So whatever is the essence of where all of this comes from, your source energy of all of this is just amazing. It's like like I'm going to go with what Lynn said. It is a total vibe. It's very it's very soft and warm energy, which I really connect to, but very deep and profound. And so I know you're doing coaching. We could go to your website and book with you there.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I work with people as a writing coach and as a sovereignty coach. So depending on what area, or if you want a combination of both, we can do both.
Okay, wait. One more question, I swear. Okay, because I know everyone wants to know what a sovereignty coach is.
So, I mean, I made it up.
But we love it and we're
But
in.
sovereignty to me is taking ownership of your life, which can look a million different ways. So I think this is a nice full circle, because we go back to where we started with, we hand off authority to everyone else in our life, our parents, our churches, our governments, or whatever. And so sovereignty to me is when you take back that authority to yourself. When you actually, I have my clients actually write a contract with themselves and look for the loopholes and how they hold that contract with themselves in their everyday living, giving themselves credit for how much they survived, learning to trust themselves, learning to drop breadcrumbs so they can find their way back when they wander off the path. It's the most powerful work of my life, and I love it.
Oh my God, that is absolutely amazing. I feel like everyone should run and go take their sovereignty back, get some coaching. I'm a coach, right? But I've had coaches, and I always look for a coach whenever I want to make a change in my life.
Absolutely.
So if this is something that I know that there's sometimes economic barriers, but you'd be surprised. Like if this is something important to you, there's a change you want to make, there's a coach out there for that. Go get a
Absolutely.
coach and have that support. It's hard out here. Get some
And if
help.
you're following me, in the next month or so, I should be launching both a 30-day voice unleashing course and a private community space. So there's all kinds of things coming.
Ooh, so many goodies coming. Well, once you've got that all up and running, I would love to invite you back to
I
share
would love
that with my audience. There usually we have a handful of regulars that tune in live, but in when this goes out over the replay, that's when the most of the audience tunes in and really enjoys, what we have to offer here. And I think that reaching that audience will be really great, and hopefully we'll connect with the right souls that
that.
feel really drawn and resonate with your message and everything you're doing. So
Well,
uh, yeah.
thank you so much for having me on today. This has been a joy.
Oh, it's so much fun. It's such a pleasure to hang out with you and hear your story and share your words, and just it's been amazing fun. So I want to say
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Right now we'll put you in the green room. If you have time for a proper goodbye, then I will meet you there in just a minute. If you don't, I understand we got started a little late. So I will understand if you have to skedaddle
I
and
will
you
wait.
have things to do. So but I definitely appreciate you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I can't tell you what it means to me to share your energy with my audience.
Thank you.
And yes, Linz, I will beg her to come back
Yes,
again
I'm back.
soon so she can share more with everybody because it's necessary. It's needed. So thank you, my dear. I'll see you in a minute. Well, you guys, thanks for tuning in as always, and supporting this podcast and listening to this podcast for those of you who are listening to it. Jeanette is cool, right? Like, I knew that she was going to be a good fit for this show because you guys love that kind of energy. And so do I. That's all I know. So hopefully we'll have her back in a couple of months when she's launching everything, and we'll get to ask her more questions. So make sure you tune in then so you can ask her questions and watch her live. Maybe she'll pull a card for you. I loved that. Did you guys love that? Anyways, I want to thank you for tuning in. It has been a pleasure. There's no Hot Topics Live tomorrow. It's been a special Wednesday episode. I will be back next week with another amazing guest. I think Gloria's gonna pop on with me next week, so that should be fun. And we are gonna talk to, I believe, a woman with a really incredible and inspiring story. Like, it's an overcoming adversity type of story that will help elevate and uplift you, and give you some inspiration to do the same or something like that. So as always, I appreciate you. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. If you want to follow me, you know how to do it. Follow me on Instagram, as of course. You guys know that I am on TikTok now too, at Creativity, like my Instagram. So come follow me over there. And don't forget to listen to the podcast in podcast form if you want, or check us out on YouTube. I'm growing on YouTube finally. So go and subscribe and like stuff and watch the full episode and leave me a comment, and set your notifications, of course, for when we come live. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. I love you guys, and I will talk to you next time.